Okay, welcome to the City of Pacifica Planning Commission meeting for September 17th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Present.
Commissioner Stedging.
Present.
Vice Chair Clifford.
Present.
Chair Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Gordon.
Here.
Commissioner Niblin.
Here.
And Commissioner Kraske is absent.
Okay, for the salute to the flag, Commissioner Stedgick, please.
I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Stedgick. On to administrative business, approval of the order of agenda. All right, Commissioner Gordon.
I'll move that we approve the order of agenda.
Commissioner Neblin.
Second.
Okay, we've had our motion. A second, please vote. That passes unanimously. On to approval of the minutes. There are none, so designation of a liaison to the City Council meeting for the marijuana ordinance amendment for October 8th, 2018. Staff, please.
Yes, so the ordinance amendment that's before you as item number 5 on the agenda, we will be taking that to City Council on October 8th. Is that the right date? And it's just 1 week after your next meeting, so we thought we'd get you guys to go ahead and select your liaison tonight.
Okay. Let's see. Well, that's next Monday?
No.
No, I'm sorry.
October
Second
8th,
Monday
yeah.
Oh, October 8th, yeah, right. I'll take that. All right. Onward to oral communications. This portion of the agenda is available to the public to address the Planning Commission on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission that is not on the agenda. The time allowed for any speaker would be 3 minutes. If anyone wishes to speak, you could fill out a card in the back, bring it up to staff. And I am not seeing any cards, so we're going to move on. No consent items tonight, so we're going to go on to a public hearing, or actually a continued public hearing for the Taco Bell Cantina. The recommended action is to continue to the regular meeting of October 1st, 2018. Staff report, please.
Excuse me, permission to recuse due to proximity
yeah.
500 feet?
One moment. Commissioner Stedgick is recused. Okay, staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Staff is proposing to continue this item to the regular meeting of October 1st, 2018. This city staff and the applicant are working through some historical permitting details and needed some additional time to sort those out before returning to the commission.
Okay. Let's see. We have questions for staff. Commissioner Neblin?
I'd just move that we continue this item to the regular meeting of October 1st.
Okay. Commissioner Clifford?
I'll second that motion. There's no need to.
All right. We've had a motion and a second. Please vote. All right. That public hearing on the Taco Bell Cantina is continued to the regular meeting of October 1st, 2018. On to new public hearings. This one is for it's also continuance for the installation of a new wireless communications facility within the public right-of-way of San Pedro Avenue. Welcome back, Commissioner Stedgick.
Thank you.
Barely gave you enough time to get up here. So the recommended action is continued to the regular meeting of October 15th, 2018. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The applicant in this case has requested to amend its plans, and so in order to allow the city staff time to evaluate those modifications, we're requesting the Planning Commission continue this public hearing until October 15th.
Okay. Commissioner Clifford?
I move that we continue this to October 15th, 2018.
Okay. Do we have a second? Commissioner Stedgick?
Second.
We've had a motion and a second. Please vote. Okay. The new wireless communications facility hearing is continue to the regular meeting October 15th, 2018. Similarly, the installation of a new wireless communications facility within the public right-of-way of Odstad Boulevard, approximately 575 feet northeast of Lindemore Boulevard. There's a recommended action tonight to continue it to the regular meeting on October 15th, 2018. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair. As with agenda item number 2 preceding, the applicant in this case has requested to modify its plans for this wireless communications facility. In order to allow sufficient time for evaluation by staff, we're requesting the continuance to October 15th.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Neblin.
I'd move that we continue this item to the regular meeting of October 15th, 2018.
Thank you. Commissioner Clifford.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. And that wireless communications facility hearing is continued to the regular meeting on October 16th, 2018. All right, on to a public hearing on marijuana use permit MUP 4-18 for the establishment of a marijuana retail operation within an existing 541 square foot commercial space within the marijuana operation Sharp Park Overlay District at 2270 Palmetto Avenue. The recommended action tonight is to approve as conditioned. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Senior Planner Christian Murdoch. I'm joined this evening by Police Chief Dan Steidel, Planning Director Tina Wehrmeister, and Assistant City Attorney Kevin Siegel. The item before you is the first marijuana use permit application to be considered by the Planning Commission under the city's Cannabis Business Program enacted in 2017. The city's program consists of 3 phases of review. Phase 1, a background check investigation, and Phase 2, a security plan review, are managed by the Police Department. Phase 3, the marijuana use permit process, is managed by the Planning Department and culminates with a public hearing at the Planning Commission. Beginning in Phase 3, Planning Department staff worked closely with the police chief and his team to carefully review this application against the requirements in the Pacifica Municipal Code, particularly those in Article 48 of Chapter 4 of Title 9, known as the Marijuana Regulations. Under the marijuana regulations, the proposed facility is classified as a marijuana retail operation. A marijuana retail operation may sell cannabis-related products for medical, non-medical, or both medical and non-medical purposes. The application before you would be for medical sales only, as the applicant has stated in its operations plan. Marijuana retail operations are limited to marijuana operation overlay districts established by the City Council. There is a citywide limit of 6 marijuana retail operations and a limit of 2 within any overlay district. The subject operation would be located within the marijuana operation Sharp Park Overlay District, or MOSP, and would be the first marijuana retail operation to be permitted within the city. Marijuana retail operations are further prohibited from operating within 600 feet of a K-12 school or youth center and 200 feet of a daycare center, which is in operation at the time of determination on the use permit. Staff has verified that the proposed operation complies with these distance requirements as of this public hearing. The proposed operation would be open daily from 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. Customer parking would be provided in an off-street parking lot located at the rear of the site. The operation of the use would generally consist of customers entering the business, an employee verifying their identification and medical cannabis prescription, referencing past orders for returning customers, discussing product options for the current visit, then dispensing the medical cannabis. Typically, new customers would spend about 10 to 15 minutes in the business, while returning customers would spend 5 to 10 minutes, according to the applicant. 2 employees would be on site at all times. Staff received 1 public comment on this item prior to the public hearing in support of the application. I've placed copies in the rear of the council chambers and in the front of each planning commissioner. As explained in the staff report, Planning Department staff believes the subject application satisfies all requirements of the marijuana regulations and should be approved as conditioned. If the commission approves the marijuana use permit and after expiration of the 10-day appeal period to City Council, the police chief will confirm continued satisfaction of Phase 1 background check requirements. If satisfactory, the police chief would then issue the marijuana public safety license, which is the companion approval from the police department, and the subject marijuana retail operation would be eligible to operate after satisfying all conditions of approval contained in the marijuana use permit and after obtaining all applicable state licenses. To conclude, staff recommends adopting the attached resolution to approve marijuana use permit MUP-4-18, subject to conditions, And staff is available to answer any of the commission's questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Clifford.
The one question I have, and it revolves around the term medical marijuana versus recreational marijuana. It appears that they're applying only for a medical marijuana.
That's correct.
If they wanted to change that and sell both medical and recreational, do they have to come back to us?
Not necessarily. The limitation is self-imposed by the applicant through its operation plan. And so only by reference to the operation plan would this marijuana use permit, if approved, limit their sales. And so they could submit a request to amend that operations plan to the planning director. And based on her determination, she may be able to approve it administratively, or if the circumstances warrant, bring it to a public hearing before the planning commission.
Thank you very much.
All right, Commissioner Gordon.
Sure, thanks. Chair, a follow-up question from Commissioner Clifford's question. If it's kind of a hypothetical question, let's say, for example, this was an application for medical and for recreational use. How would the scrutiny change, aside from, for example, the number of the amount of traffic that the place would receive and therefore parking, blah, 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 blah. How else would the scrutiny change?
I'm not aware of really any meaningful difference between the operation of the two with respect to the Planning Commission's evaluation of the use permit that's being requested. As you mentioned, the volume of customer traffic could increase. Traffic not meaning just vehicle traffic, but the volume of customers coming in and out by foot or by other modes of transportation. And so that could lead to different types of impacts because it's a broader segment that's being served. Beyond that, there's no difference in the way the police department or the planning department in its review evaluated the applications. It's the same consideration of securing and complying with the ordinance's requirements. The real distinction, which is beyond the purview of the Planning Commission, is with respect to taxation. And so qualified medical patients may be exempt from certain taxes other than the city's local excise tax. But beyond that, staff has not identified a difference in the likely operation of the facilities.
Boy, I'm just dying to ask that question in terms of taxes. So in terms of revenue generation for the city, how does it change?
I think we can assume that a combined medical and non-medical facility would likely sell more product, but that's not necessarily a true assumption in my mind.
But can the city, for example, impose a tax on revenue generated from the sale of medical marijuana?
Yes, and it has. And there's no exemption unless the operation is a qualified, federally listed, tax-exempt organization, which we believe is unlikely to be the case until the discrepancy between state and federal law is resolved with respect to cannabis regulation.
And just to be clear, that the exemption that you hear about with card-carrying medical patients has to do with the sales tax to the patient and not an excise tax to the operations, which is a business tax.
Oh, I
And
see.
so regardless of medical or recreational use, the excise tax will be the same.
Thank you.
I'm just going to take advantage of that comment to follow up on one. I was looking at the Kittleson and Associates traffic analysis, August 21st, 2018. That was attached to the package. When it talks about the Fogg Foundation offices. And so my understanding is that it's next door in the same building, I think. That doesn't sell anything at the moment, from what I gathered from the traffic analysis, or at least that's what they based it on.
Correct. That use, the Fogg Foundation, as I understand it, is a non-retail use. It's an educational outreach type of use related to cannabis usage for medical purposes, as I understand it. And so it's a non-retail use. It would be a very different type of land use than the one that's being considered this evening.
All right, and I don't know if this is a question for the police chief, but have they sold out of there before?
Not to my knowledge, no. Again,
Okay.
it's right next door. I've had conversations with them on the phone, and my understanding of how that's business is being run is exactly what Mr. Murdoch said.
Okay, this might be a question then for the applicant at some point. I mean, if you go online, they say that they're selling.
So are you referring to the foundation?
Yes, I am.
Okay. The foundation, not our applicant, the foundation doesn't sell, and to our knowledge, hasn't sold.
Okay, and that'll be a question, I think, for the applicant, because on their website, they say they're selling. So I just want to make sure the traffic analysis is accurate with regard to both. It just seems like there's a discrepancy there. Let's see. What else? Let's see, Commissioner Neplin.
Thank you. A couple questions regarding, I think it's on page 14 of the packet. Reference to Emerald Fog, which I think, as I'm understanding, it used to operate in the space that we're talking about here. And was Emerald Fog a medical marijuana dispensary? Was that their model?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, they sold medical cannabis only under the laws that they believed they were following at the time under state law. As it's well known, that was not a permitted dispensary under local law, and so we do not have, comprehensive business information about them because they were unpermitted.
Thank you. But along the lines you're sort of alluding to, I mean, is there anything that we can derive experientially just in terms of complaints or traffic or what have you, based on the unpermitted operations of Emerald Fog back at the time that they were operating, that might be useful to us as we're thinking about sort of level of operation and concerns we might have about the instant application?
Certainly. Staff is not aware and cannot recall of any code enforcement complaints that arose from the operation of that unpermitted Emerald Fog dispensary. I do recall that particular business brought a significant number of supporters to the various public hearings during development of the city's marijuana regulations. So those are the impressions that I have. I'll defer to Chief Steidle if there were any criminal-related complaints.
We had no criminal-related complaints. The only phone calls that we would receive were people wanting to know if we knew that this business was currently operating. And actually, to the opposite extent, when we learned of their business and we showed up at the door, they invited us in and showed us their operation. We're more than welcome to talk to us about what was going on there.
Thank you, Chief. I think along similar lines, I mean, one of the things that struck me about this particular application is that it's located in a building that's it's in the commercial zone, but it is a mixed-use building, and there are residential uses upstairs and some other sort of similar uses in the area. I was curious about the noticing, and it sounded like, if I understood correctly, we hadn't received any, in connection with this particular application, we hadn't received any public comment other than, I think, the stuff we saw today, and I think you were alluding to maybe one or two other comments. But the folk who live in the building didn't have any particular feedback with respect to this application?
None have reached out to me or other staff, to my knowledge.
And we noticed this in the ordinary course?
We did.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Stejcik.
Is there any overlap there between the previous occupant and the current applicant?
To the best of my knowledge, the current applicants that comprise the LLC, which is applying for this marijuana use permit, one or more of them may have been employees of the Emerald Fog dispensary, but to my knowledge, as has been represented to me, none of them were owners of that operation. And therefore, I think there's an ability to distinguish between people going and working a job and doing what they do and someone who knowingly operated an unlawful, unpermitted dispensary.
And these, John and Patty Zussman, this letter we received, are they referring to the current applicants or the prior occupants?
I didn't understand what you said in the first part of your question.
Yeah, we've got a letter here dated September 17th from John and Patty Zussman of Portola Valley, California. And it says, we want to express our support for the Fog Center's cannabis license application. They're current customers of the existing applicant or the prior location?
It would have to be the prior because the current applicant is not operating.
Okay. Are we to give weight to potential voter uses of this property? Specifically the Hilton Hotel in the January 5th library report we were given, there's on page 48, there was a very specific teen center detailed that prioritized social activities and gaming as a #1 activity there. And that is in direct contrast to the state's legal definition of youth center that must be a significant distance away. I'm curious, should we, since the library doesn't exist now, it would have to be voted on by a bond to ever exist? Are we to assume that for this purpose that it does not exist?
I would tell you that the ordinance calls for consideration of facilities which exist currently as of the date of determination and issuance of the permit. To rely on some other future
Thank you.
youth center, I think would be speculative and would not be a sound basis for
Thank you.
determining on this permit.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
That actually was my first question. Secondly, is the use of marijuana allowed in the facility?
No, city ordinance explicitly prohibits consumption of cannabis products on the dispensary grounds.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gordon.
You guys are raising so many good questions. Following up on the question about the library, and I realize it's a tough one, but let's say, for example, the voters approve the library and it goes up and it's within the distance prescribed proximity to the cannabis center. What would be the would the dispensary then be grandfathered in? What would be the impact? Since I guess I'm only asking because it's a really central location for the Palmetto redevelopment plan.
I would argue that the permit would remain valid. That scenario was contemplated during development of the marijuana regulations, and it was a conscious decision to ensure that it was uses in effect at the time of determination, so that those that followed all of the rules and went through and did what they were supposed to do to get a permit would not be penalized by some changing circumstance beyond their control in the future. It would perhaps have an impact on the ability of another dispensary or marijuana retail operation to open, but it would not have a direct impact on the ongoing operations of those that are already permitted.
Thanks.
Commissioner Clifford.
I don't remember about putting that button on.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you're for Commissioner Stedgick.
Is there anything missing from their application that would allow them to sell recreational marijuana? Do they have an incomplete recreational marijuana application permit?
No, there's not a separate permit for medical or non-medical marijuana sales. It's the same permit, and that goes in line with my response to Commissioner Gordon that we draw no distinction between the medical or non-medical operation. That's why we classified them as one type of use, a marijuana retail operation. It's simply a self-imposed restriction at this point by this applicant, indicating in its operations plan that it only wanted to sell medical marijuana.
This question is for the city attorney. Would it be within the planning commission's purview to approve this operation for recreational marijuana also tonight? Or would that have to be separately agendized?
Well, from what I'm understanding, there's not a distinction between the two, so I don't know where the basis would be to draw it from the put it into the conditions of approval or otherwise make it part of the findings. It would have to be, any action on that, on the grounds of the land uses would have to be founded on the impacts from those uses as opposed to any distinctions that were just brought that aren't land use based.
So there are no sanctions or intent for sanctions if this turns out to be a recreational marijuana location?
I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware of any in the code from what I've seen, or the use permit.
Thank you.
Terms, or the there's the general use permit terms and the specific use permit terms for medical or for marijuana uses, and I didn't see anything in there that drew the distinction between recreational or non-recreational uses.
Thank you very much.
And I may offer, if the commission wanted to make it clear that any approval that may be granted would authorize medical and non-medical sales, it could clarify so in condition number 6, which is the restrictive condition I mentioned previously that would limit this marijuana retail operation to sales in accordance with its operations plan. And that's where the applicant has self-imposed a medical-only model. But the commission could say the marijuana retail operation shall operate in accordance with the operations plan received by the planning department and date stamped April 20th, 2018, except that it shall not be limited to the sale of medical cannabis only. Something to that effect, subject to confirmation by the city attorney.
It seems like there's an awful lot of incomplete applications. This is a complete one. I'm curious, is there one item that all the incompletes are missing, say insurance or something? Thank you.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Yeah, Christian, I had a quick question. You had mentioned that maybe wasn't following it correctly. After we approve this, or if we approve this, the background checks would then occur? They haven't yet occurred.
The background checks have occurred as part of Phase 1. The point that I was trying to clarify is that it's not as though you act on your best behavior and get through Phase 1 and the city never goes back again. So the police chief, before issuing the marijuana public safety license, will be sure that none of the disqualifying convictions have occurred since his Phase 1 determination and until his issuance of the marijuana public safety license. And the chief may be able to comment on what measures may be in place for moving forward after approval of both to ensure that no disqualifying convictions occur.
Okay.
Certainly. So the backgrounds are already complete. So when I go back, if this were approved, I would then go back to our system and just take a look in our system, make sure that there are no notifications that we've missed of any subsequent convictions. So what happens from this point forward is once we've put them through the DOJ and FBI background checks, which is via the live scan machine, the fingerprints on the computer. So because that record is attached with the Pacifica Police Department, any subsequent conviction of any type, we would get notification of. And at that point, we would take a look to see what that conviction was, to see if it was something that disqualified either the business owner or the employee from operating or from working in that business.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Gordon.
I'll pass.
Commissioner Neblin.
Just one more question. I wanted to know, either from staff or the city attorney, what our discretion is to adjust the hours of operation if, for example, the commission were to think that maybe 8 p.m. is a little late for operations, particularly that are taking place in a building that also houses residential uses.
Certainly, if you allow me to find the reference to the hours of operation in the ordinance, I'll be able to respond.
Thank you. Well, I think that, my question was whether or not we just had discretion to truncate the hours if we thought that 8 was too late.
Yes, the ordinance allows up to 10 p.m., but allows the commission to set more restrictive hours as warranted. I just wanted to be sure there wasn't some limitation on the circumstances that could warrant a further restriction.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, Commissioner Gordon.
Sorry about that. Following up on Commissioner Neblin's comment or question, those upper floor occupants, do we know, are those renters or are they owners, or do we know?
It's my recollection of the approval of that development in the early 2000s that it was a condominium development. Whether the individuals in the units are renters or owners, I have no information to that.
Okay, thanks.
I had a question about discretion. On page 10, you note that the two sites are located more than 200 feet from the library, mainly. And let's see, a couple daycare centers. They're located greater or farther than 200 feet, and that means they're outside the buffer established in the ordinance for daycare centers and things like that. So that's really kind of the end of the discussion, right, as far as that's concerned, or is there some discretion there? Because, well, go ahead.
Sure. So the explicit standard are the buffers that you identified, the 600 feet to K through 12 schools and youth centers and 200 feet to daycare centers. The findings for approval do allow some discretion, as you note in the staff report. If there's some compelling public health and safety basis to consider other relevant uses that are set forth in the finding, it's in staff's opinion, because of the distance, the opposite side of the street, and the likely pedestrian pattern there, that there's not cause for concern, but the commission may have a different opinion on that matter.
Thank you. That was my question. I was wondering why the discussion had been made about the fact that the small size and it being across the street was included in the staff report. Thank you. Commissioner Stejnik.
Do the statewide regulations for smoking marijuana in proximity to the building apply to, smoking tobacco also apply to smoking marijuana within a certain proximity of the building?
Smoking marijuana in a public place on a public street is illegal, period. You can't walk, so if you were, if there's so many feet for tobacco, marijuana in public, outside of the business, in a public place, on the sidewalk, completely illegal.
Has anyone been charged with that in the last year?
We've issued, there are infractions, we have issued citations for that, yes.
Thank you.
Chair, if I could follow up to Commissioner Niblin's question, there is no set of qualifiers or other conditions that would affect the commission's determination to further restrict the hours. It's subject to the commission's discretion in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch.
Okay, I don't see any other questions for staff, so at this point, I'm going to ask the applicant to come up. You have 10 minutes to present your project.
This was
Good evening, Commission members, city employees, and residents of Pacifica. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be heard tonight. My name is Mark Hancock. I'm a management consultant. I run a firm out of Half Moon Bay, and I'm friends with Jesus. And I'm also on the board of the FOG Foundation, a 501c3 educational organization. And allow me to upfront say that Christian and his team have been excellent to work with. His team fully understanding that we aren't transportation engineers and architects and the like. They really took their time to teach us, instruct us, and help us through the process. So I think they should be commended to their public service. Thank you.
My name is Jesus Sagoon, and I am the CEO of the Fog Center, LLC. For the past 3 years, I was employed under Emerald Fog, a nonprofit collective established under Prop 215. I was hired as a bud tender and delivery driver, and within a few months, I was helping manage all aspects of the business. I had not only the pleasure of helping Emerald Fog grow as a company, but also as a trusted member of the community for cannabis education and clean, safe organic medicine. We have helped provide relief through delivery to patients who otherwise would have no access to medicine. We have provided education to those in need and will continue to educate the community on the safe and responsible use of medicinal cannabis through the Fog Foundation, a nonprofit educational center and community member established by Emerald Fog's founder, Joe Kerr. I've seen the lives of hundreds change for the better in the time I worked for Emerald Fog, and with this in mind, upon release of the new legislature and the closure of Emerald Fog in December of last year, I decided to start the application process to establish the Fog Center, LLC, in an effort to continue providing the community of Pacifica a safe and responsible place to obtain clean, organic medicinal cannabis. Safety is one of our top priorities. We always verify every patient is of legal age with the proper documentation before they are allowed to enter the retail area where they sit down with the bud tender. Our location is secured with an ADT security alarm system. We also have a closed circuit security camera system inside as well as the outside with live streaming and a 90-day backup hard drive. With this system, the city may request footage for any given date and time and can be provided to the city within 24 hours. There's always 2 to 3 bud tenders on site and at any point during operation, and we also have on-site security during high peak hours. In order to provide the best possible service to our patients, our bud tenders are well versed with knowledge of medicinal cannabis as well as all the products we carry. They will take the time with each patient to meet all their individual needs and make sure all questions have been answered. Before leaving the store, all patients will have their medicine safely secured in a smell-proof and child-proof exit bag for extra safety and as discretion. Aside from the product on display for patients to review, all product is stored safely in a storage room where only myself or the manager on site will have access to. We are always easily available to answer questions and concerns patients may have and can be reached through a number of platforms including email, Facebook, Instagram, snail mail, and of course, direct call. We plan to operate 7 days a week, excluding major holidays, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. We chose these hours in order to respect our neighbors from early as well as late night traffic. There is no on-site consumption, and our employees are not allowed to consume during their shift. Our bud tenders are all members of this community who dress respectively in a shirt and tie when on delivery or working in store. We are ready to bring back the professional service our patients have come to love, and as members of this community, we are here to help improve the city of Pacifica. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have some questions. Questions from Commissioner Gordon.
Sure. Question for you guys. What's the relationship between the FOG Center and the FOG Foundation?
The FOG Foundation, I speak to that, I'm on the board. The FOG Foundation is an independent 501c3 educational organization. One of our slogans is medical is responsible. It's dedicated to the education and research of how medical cannabis affects things like pain, quality of life, and the like, and especially for the older members of our community, educating them as an alternative pain relief therapy to opioids and the like. There's the only relation, I'm on the board, Jesus is on the board, but there's zero business relationship between the two organizations, and by definition, there can't be. We're a 501c3 educational organization.
So do you have other, so the FOG Foundation, does it have any kind of, what kind of affiliation would it have with this operation?
Other than Jesus being on the board as a community member, it would have no affiliation with the FOG Center. Fundamentally, from a regulatory perspective, there can't be any affiliation.
Okay. Does the FOG Foundation, are any of the board members also in any LLCs that are related to medical marijuana and retail?
No, sir. I can speak to that. I'm on the board. No, sir.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm not.
Oh, sure. I'm just saying I could speak to it because I'm on the board. And no, the only overlap there would be is Jesus is affiliated with the FOG Center, and he also sits unpaid, sits on the board of the FOG Foundation.
I see. And so the FOG Foundation's thing really is medical marijuana.
Yes, sir, 100%. It's an educational mission centered around medical marijuana and its therapeutic uses.
Because you heard there was some discussion on the up here about, well, why aren't they applying for recreational uses as well? And it sounds like that's inconsistent with your.
What was it? I'm sorry. Why aren't they applying for?
Why aren't they also applying for permission to sell non-medical marijuana?
Oh, sure. No, inconsistent with the mission. Again, the FOG Center is, I think, whomever on staff was saying, is self-limiting itself to medical patients. Mm-hmm. Okay. But the foundation has no sales of cannabis in any respect.
And my final question is, maybe somebody asked this already. What's the relationship between either the FOG Foundation and so the LLC is new.
Brand new.
Brand new, right. The FOG Foundation is pre-existing.
No. The FOG Foundation was organized in if I'm remembering correctly, late December of last year.
Okay. So what's the relationship between the prior operators of the business that was in this location and the FOG Foundation? And or the FOG Center.
I suppose I'm sorry, I'm stealing your thunder. I suppose the relationship is Jesus was an employee of the old Emerald FOG. Jesus is now, the CEO of the LLC, just to use shorthand, and also on the board of the foundation. The prior operator of Emerald FOG, who is no longer, involved with this LLC, Joe Kerr, is the executive director of the FOG Foundation. It's been his mission to spread, if you will, the gospel about medical cannabis.
Oh, thanks.
Commissioner Neblin.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Gordon was hitting some of the same things I was interested in.
Okay, Commissioner Stednick.
Thanks for coming, guys. I have a couple questions for you. Was a prior owner of FOG Center a felon?
Not that I'm aware.
It's a new establishment. There has been no prior owner to the FOG Center. I'm the first owner.
Sorry, Emerald FOG.
Not to our knowledge.
Okay. The bud tender position as defined employs a security function. Are these licensed security guards?
No, the bud tenders are not licensed security guards. There's just 2 to 3 on-site at any given point in time. We have licensed security guards during high peak hours.
Are the bud tenders armed, or how will they provide a security function?
If anyone were to come in, we give them what they want. We have cameras to provide to the city. We don't carry any sort of weapons on site of any kind.
So what is the bud tender's security function?
There's just 2 to 3 people on site to make sure nothing goes wrong, and if anything goes wrong, someone can call. If, anything.
One of the problems other municipalities have had is actually tracking these sales down so they can tax it. Will each sale have a unique identifier or a serial number? Say someone left it on the street at the bus bench out front. Would we be able to track that sale back to a certain individual?
You would not be able to track the sale unless they left the receipt inside the bag.
Would you object to a unique identifier system?
We would not.
Would you object to a more traditional business day, say 9 to 5 or 10 to 5?
No.
Does your insurance cover both recreational and medical sales?
Yes. We're only sticking with medical, though. We won't be going into recreational.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Rubenstein.
Yep. Jesus, I just had a couple questions around some security questions that I had. Is it primarily a cash business?
No, we will be accepting credit cards and checks as well.
Just historically, in your experience, is it mainly cash?
No, when I was working for Emerald Fog, we also accepted checks and credit cards. We've always run business how we would run any other business.
Okay, so do you have any policy or procedure on cash management? I'm just concerned about security, how cash is held on site, how it's removed from the site.
Cash will be on site, stored securely in the safe back, which I will only be the only one who have access to it. It'll be deposited every evening by myself.
Will you have in San Francisco, some of these marijuana facilities have a security guard out front checking credentials. Is that going to be the case here?
We don't think so. We don't want to have that approach. We believe it's a little bit of an intimidating approach to a lot of people. They see a security guard, they feel a little bit intimidated. We'll have a security guard on site during high peak hours. We've never had any issues in the time that I worked with Emerald Fog as to any sort of problem with anyone being rowdy or anything like that. So we don't see a need for it, but if it's required, we can definitely make that happen.
And as alluded to earlier, would you be willing to accept as a conditional approval specific hours, whether they be the hours you've cited or more
Yes.
limited hours? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all my questions.
Commissioner Neblin.
Thanks. I actually did have one more question, and thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Curious about your interactions with the folks who live upstairs in the same building as you all. Did you, anything you can report to us about any communications you've had with them?
We talk to everyone. We say hello to everyone. They're good friends of ours. They all support us. They've never had any issues with any of us downstairs. We've always let them know if they ever have any problems to come to us, and we'll make sure to take care of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Stadnick?
Was the previous location, Emerald Fog, affiliated with a school bus holding marijuana that was robbed earlier this year?
It was not.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gordon.
Thanks. I am trying, as we're talking here, I'm trying to look up some information on the Fogg Foundation because it's interesting to me, but I'm having a hard time finding it. Do you guys have a website or something to refer me to?
For the Fog Foundation, there's
Yeah.
currently only a Facebook page.
The Facebook page. Okay, thanks.
So follow up on that. I went to the Facebook page and it says uni.ca/curesf is proud to take over service to the Fogg family. Our bud tenders are now working for Uni California Cure SF through this time to assist. And then you have a number of Google reviews which would indicate that you are either selling, providing, or giving away cannabis products at that facility. So can you explain that for me?
From the foundation's perspective, and we're aware of that, that was the Fogg Center's attempt to make some revenue in San Francisco. That was in partnership with a San Francisco licensee, and that was a San Francisco operation. Go ahead.
It wasn't operated under the Fog Center LLC. They allowed us to use our name so we could help our patients so they'd feel more comfortable getting delivery from someone new, but it was all under a different company.
And we could verify that how?
We can provide paperwork.
Okay, I'm going to ask that we get that paperwork. That'd be useful to see. I had another question. One moment. So you attached to your operations plan a list of products that you're going to be selling and the suppliers. And I noticed, well, first I noticed that you mentioned Calvic Collective LLC
Yes.
and Beazle Brands as two of the suppliers. Cal Vape Collective providing some things, including gummies. Now, neither of those companies I could find on the, as registered as corporations in California. One looks like it went to another type of business entity, and another one just couldn't be found. So are you, well, first I'm kind of curious, where are you purchasing your supplies from, and are they reputable businesses? I mean, or are they businesses?
Currently, we haven't purchased any. We haven't purchased anything under the Fog Center LLC. When we were operating with Uni, that was all purchased through Uni. They did the buying. We didn't do any buying when we were working there. We just did
Sorry,
deliveries.
you purchased everything through who?
When we haven't purchased anything under the Fog Center LLC. When working under the Uni, they did all the purchasing, the company CureSF.
Oh, so this is the facility that you were saying
Yes.
you were working with temporarily,
Correct.
but you have it in your operations plan as them, as,
We're
that
hoping
doesn't
to
say
bring
Cal
these.
Uni in here.
We're hoping to bring these back on board.
It's my understanding that these are representative products. I'm not sure, I certainly, nor Jesus, I don't think, has done any diligence on these companies, but it's my understanding these are representative products. I mean, were you aware that they folded or something?
No.
Okay, so there's, well, okay, they're all there in your operations plan, so one would assume the due diligence had been done, but maybe not.
I also think it's fair to understand that with the shifting market, these cannabis companies go in and out. And I believe this plan was submitted a number of months ago. So that's my understanding, but again.
Okay. I also noticed that you are selling edibles that are in the form of gummies. I see watermelon gummies, I see cherry cola gummies, sour apple gummies. Are these going to be compliant with the California restrictions on edibles that look or are attractive to kids?
Yes. They're not in any shape or form marketed towards children with any cartoons or any characters of that kind. They look like medicinal products that you would buy at a prescription store.
Okay, and how can we verify that?
We can bring a product in or take a picture because we would require a medical card in order to bring a product in. So we could just take a picture to verify that once we have the product.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hope that those photos and that verification is in the paperwork for this facility before it opens. Thank you. I saw that the peak hours from your traffic report ended at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Was that right on that?
Yes, sir.
So you'd have no objection, or would you have any objection to closing before, even earlier than 5 o'clock?
Commissioner, what would be the rationale for closing before 5 o'clock? We're curious.
Oh, well, you're close to the library,
I
and
see.
the school gets out at 3, and the school's right down the street.
I mean, I suppose, I mean, not to put words in Jesus's mouth, but I suppose we'd be open to discussing it. It just seems odd to go outside of normal business hours, but I'm sure
Just
we'd be
curious.
open to discuss it.
All right, that is what I've got for now. Let's see, Commissioner Rubenstein.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on your question. Is it possible to put conditions on the type of edibles that are allowed to be sold?
Sure, sure. If the commissioners feel like there are particular edibles that are too much of a risk for one reason or another, I'm sure we'd be open to not selling those.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only thinking with regards to teenagers and kids, not for any, medical use.
Let's see.
I guess that would be a question for the attorney, though.
There'd be no sales to teenagers or kids.
No, I understand you couldn't
Oh,
sell,
okay.
but I'm just, as the product gets out into the market, or into the community.
Well, I mean, the short of it is that I would try to focus any restrictions there on the impacts that are identified in the use permit requirements as to the reasons for that. So that's what I would recommend that you do if you have concerns about the uses of the site in that regard. Find if there's any conditions there to impact that.
Right, I'm completely have no information on, I know with cigarettes, for example, there are rules about how you can market, you can't have like a strawberry flavored cigarette or something like that, with a picture that would be appealing to children. So I don't know if there's the similar regulations within the marijuana industry, or if that's not yet, if it's too immature for that right now, I'm not sure.
If I may on that, it was my understanding that the state regulations as far as packaging, and you can chime in if as well on this, but we're very stringent. The idea is no matter what type of cannabis product is leaving the business, it's in a safety container, it's sealed, it's child-proof, and it's my understanding that edibles would be the same way.
Correct.
The onus upon, the idea behind it was not marketing to children, the package being safe to when it leaves the facility, it's being purchased by someone of age, as long as the business is doing their due diligence to make sure that the customer is of age. Once it reaches that point, then it's the onus is upon the burden of the safety is upon the purchaser to make sure that it doesn't get into the child's hands. That was the purpose for, and if I remember correctly, there was 30 or 40 something pages of just in the regulation from the state and the packaging alone to make it as safe as possible in the establishment and when it's leaving the establishment.
Yeah, I mean, I only ask that because I know these edibles, some of them are incredibly powerful, and they're tasty and small, so.
As of the new state laws, nothing can be more than 100 milligrams per packaging, and it all has to be divided into 5 milligram doses. All the really powerful edibles have been outlawed.
Okay.
If there's anything that's still available out there, it's through illegal dispensaries that are still operating.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to follow up on that real quick, because I do think there's a lot of restrictions on packaging, but, and I think there's some on window displays, but I'm not sure. So I wanted to ask, you've got a condition, we have a condition here from the city that you're going to remove the frosted glazing of the storefront window?
Correct. It's currently frosted for security, so there's anyone is tempted to just go inside to see an empty building and just go into the back.
Right, that's great. And what about displays on the windows themselves? Again, I'm kind of concerned about, any displays where you've got, picture of
There won't be any,
puppies or something like that.
there won't be any displays in the windows. It's going to be clear, and for the cops to come by, they can see, and it'll be easy to walk in.
Okay.
All of the signage is clearly indicated in our application.
All what?
All of the signage is clearly indicated in the application. I believe there's 3 required signs about no smoking on premises, security, and underage. But there would be no additional signage in the windows.
Okay, those 3 are the signages you kind of have to have,
yep.
but doesn't preclude more. So you wouldn't mind a condition that said, no storefront displays of edibles that look like candy, for example, or something
No.
like that?
And we also don't carry any of those products. We stay away from that. Those products tend to market towards the younger audience, and our focus is medical. Any medicinal product doesn't look like a kid's toy or like, kid's cartoon or anything like that.
Okay. Let's see, got more lights. Commissioner Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. So, the new laws governing edibles, in addition to restricting the amount of THC that's allowable in each product, which you mentioned, there's also pretty restrictive limits in terms of packaging, and I wanted to read them to you briefly to make sure and see if you would comply with them. And partly it's to educate us, because a lot of our comments are actually already covered in the law, and so they're already required to comply with this law, which says that edibles resembling fruit, animals, or humans will be prohibited starting January 1st. Products may not resemble or be referred to as candy after that date. Labels can't have cartoons, images, or other messaging that could potentially appeal to children. They may not include any kind of health promises or guarantees, and the health department reserves the right to ban any future product that it deems appealing to children. And so you guys are comfortable complying with those rules, right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks. I know those rules have been in place and written up for a while, but that's why I was surprised to see in your operations plan some of the items that I see listed here, which seem to be contrary to what Commissioner Gordon just read. So,
We can certainly amend that.
yes, please do. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Clifford.
Well, I think now all of my questions have been answered, and I want to thank the applicant for being so straightforward with us on all of this. I really don't have any additional questions that haven't been asked.
Commissioner Stenick.
Yeah, I realize these are sample product lists, but I just want to be crystal clear. The state law means no gummy bear sales.
Okay.
Thank you.
No gummy bear sales.
Is that correct, City Attorney?
Can't speak to that right now. I don't know
Okay.
exactly all the rules about the packaging of marijuana.
I think the Fog Center is comfortable not selling gummies if that's important to the council or the committee.
I guess we'll bring that up during deliberation to see if it is. Commissioner Rubenstein.
Yeah, just final comments regarding signage. Something that I found surprising today when I heard on the radio that Coca-Cola is going to be marketing a product called Coke CBD. So, I can envision the types of advertising that go on, like in a 7-Eleven and other convenience stores, with advertising these types of products as maybe some of these bigger companies get into this business. So I just want to make sure that the front of the store is going to have some signage, maybe some indication about marijuana usage, but it's not going to have advertising specific products.
Correct. It's just going to have our sign, the Fog Center, relief is in the fog, made out of wood.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and last question. So you were a manager of the last operation.
Yes, sir.
All right, and that operation was operating completely illegally, is that correct?
It was operating under the Prop 215 regulations, but we did not have, to my knowledge, a business license.
Okay, did you pay any license fees to the state when you were managing there?
Yes.
You did? And did you pay taxes?
Yes.
You did? And how did you calculate that, and maybe this is a question for the city, how did we know that we were getting the licenses and taxes if it was illegal?
They were not paying city taxes.
What were you paying?
State taxes?
Okay, so nothing to the city.
Not to my knowledge, but Joe Kerr was the one who was in charge of dealing with all the tax operations and everything like that.
And how long were you manager?
For the last 2 years.
Okay, so 2 years, but no taxes to the city?
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you. Commissioner Clifford? No, Commissioner Stednick.
My question is for the city attorney or planning director at Westminster. Did any city-specific taxes exist at that time?
So there would have been business license taxes at minimum.
Based on gross revenue or net revenue, or?
Yeah, so it's kind of little bit more complex than that. So we have to, when we issue a business license, we need to issue it for a business that's legal within the city. So if we were able to issue a business license, there would have been business license tax due.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further questions for the applicants. Stick around, you might have some after we finish with public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to open this item up for public comment, and I have, considering the amount of people in the audience, one card. If anybody wishes to speak on this, they could fill out a card in the back, bring it up to staff, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Someone handed us this orange card.
Maybe hand it to staff for me, please. Thank you. And then they could bring it up here. Thanks, appreciate it. All right, first speaker would be Bill Fitzpatrick.
Hi, my name is Bill Fitzpatrick. My question is in regards to the application. I guess what it comes down to is they didn't follow any of the rules of the application. My issue isn't with their, their business or their motto or any of that. It's that there were several people that applied. A lot of people applied. Everybody had to follow the rules of the application. They didn't do that. They were given a date. They were sent out a letter saying that their application was incomplete. They had 10 days to complete it. It took them 56 days to get them the information. How does that work? What happens to the people that actually went to the trouble and the expense of filling out the applications properly? I know there are people that spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money to apply following the rules set down by the city of Pacifica. How does it work where some people don't bother following the rules, wait until they find out whether they've been approved, and then decide to go do it? Doesn't seem like it's fair. But if I'm reading something wrong, I'd love to hear an answer.
We can't give you one.
You can't, okay. Well, I'd like you to at least take that into consideration on your approval, because, like I said, there are several people that did apply. The whole application process seemed to be very fair at the beginning, but then somewhere it went astray. And as it said in the Pacifica Tribune, you guys are the first. There's a lot of people watching to see how things go here, and I would think that following the rules should be one of the things that are important. If they don't follow the rules in the beginning, what's to say they're going to follow the rules down the road? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up would be, actually, go in order. Stephen Slumka. Might have got that wrong. My apologies. Hey. All right.
Good evening. I'm
Speaking,
I was the,
into the mic, please.
okay, am I close enough? Got it?
Now you are, thanks.
All right, so the reason I'm here, I was the first customer for Emerald Fog. I've been doing business with these guys for 7 years. They've been extraordinarily conscientious. I trust them implicitly. They've made deliveries to my home, and I can't speak highly enough of them. Now, if they, their business plan or their mode of operation changed when they decided to have a storefront. When this thing was a delivery-only business, there were no issues. Everything worked very smoothly. You guys are it seems setting very high obstacles in the path of getting this thing done. I think it would be, I think we've passed the laws to make marijuana legal. Okay, it's going to happen. I think you'd be very well served to have the Fog Center in Pacifica to really make that a responsible thing for the city. Okay?
Thank you. Next up would be Celia Alcantara. if I got that right. All right. Audience is going to think it's the first thing I've gotten right all night, so.
You really done it well had you said Celia. Thank you for allowing me to take up a few moments of your time. I want to address the medical use of cannabis. I'm not a spring chicken, but I've had enough chicken to know recreational use versus medical. Kid of the 60s, I was, I don't know if privileged is the right word, but attended Woodstock. And I'm not using cannabis for recreational. I am afflicted with seizures and spent many years on a lot of medication and was fortunate enough to work with the FOG and really sit down for hours with a bud tender and talk about management and effect and cause and how to use cannabis appropriately. I haven't had a seizure in 4 years. Okay, I'm not going to say it's not fun when I've smoked. Okay, I'm not going to take the privilege away of enjoying my product, but I've been respectful, I've been considerate, but moreover, I have found a professional group of people. I haven't walked into an apothecary and been surrounded by a group of people that are there for recreational purposes and felt intimidated. I've been with young people, middle-aged people, older people, with shirts and ties on, with product appropriately displayed and handled, packaged. I have had them come to my home in appropriate vehicles with, you know, a box, well, not a box, I'm sorry, but with packages or container carriages that are sealed appropriately. The products are labeled. I've never questioned, I apologize, I've never questioned what I'm getting or the organic process of it, and even kosher products. So I want you to understand that what you're debating here is appropriate for the right reasons, and that I don't think you have anything to fear. Nobody's going to be smoking or do anything damaging around the children. So I think you're okay, even as new things come up. So I hope that you'll move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's see. I think that is all I have up here as far as cards go. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I might have missed your card. Yvonne Duncan? Oh, that's you.
First, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to sit here tonight and talk about this. This is not my first time here talking about the fog and how blessed some of us are to have them in our lives. I suffer from serious chronic pain and fatigue constantly, and since I haven't been able to get my medicine through the fog, I have gone through a lot of hard times trying to get proper medication. I'm sure you're aware there's other dispensaries in your town that are operating illegally, and they're not providing secure medical marijuana. They are, you know, it's just crazy. The Fog Center has always chosen to provide medical cannabis for the older community, the more serious medical needs community. They are not looking to open up to recreational to young people that are out there just to party. That is fully against what they're here for. They are here strictly for medical uses. Anytime I've ever had the grace to have them at their house, they've always been in a full business suit, and you would never know that that is what's, you know, if my neighbors look out there and they see somebody coming to my door, they don't see some young thug, they don't see some dirty person, that, you know, it's always top of the line business. It's always straightforward, and they always sit down and talk to me about each piece of medicine, whether I've ordered it before or not. They make sure that what I'm going through at that moment, that medicine is going to be right for me. They explain to me the dosage of how much I should take for what I need. They explain to me what to do if I overconsume. They sit you down and they really take you through it. Out of all the cannabis dispensaries I've been to, they're the best. And they're top of the line, just like, Harborside has a really good name for themselves, and a lot of places model themselves around them. Well, Fog is actually up and above and beyond them. They're just, you guys should really just give them a chance to show you how awesome they are and how great they can be for your community. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we've got another card coming up. All right, this is the last card. If there's anyone else who wishes to speak, please fill one of these out in the back, and you can hand it up to staff, and you'd have 3 minutes. Next up is Rose Asensio.
I apologize, I couldn't fill it out.
That's all right. Thank you for...
Only one right now. And luckily, medical marijuana is helping that. Not only is it the flower that people use to help whatever their illnesses is, I use a medical marijuana patch that has CBD in it for my severe sciatica. I use patches, ointments for my severe migraines. These are ointments. These are ointments that work. Where I've gone to my medical physician and she has tried to give me, codeine, this, that. I don't take pills, and I don't drink alcohol, and I don't smoke cigarettes. But I will use the medical marijuana. Their establishment is wonderful. These guys, just like she explained, they go and they sit down with you. They educate you on what is good for you, what is needed for your ailment. We're not all out there to get stoned. That's not what it is. They are not going to be recreational. They are going to be a medical, working establishment that are here to help patients. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to any of you commissioners, but maybe you should call Joe Kerr at the Fog Center and get educated on what medical marijuana can do for you and your life.
Thank you. And this again is my last card. Anyone wishing to speak? This is it. Matt Miller.
Good evening, Council. My name is Matt Miller. I am a California Notary Public and an IRS registered tax preparer. Both the Fog Center LLC and the Fog Foundation are clients of mine, and I can tell you that they are in 100% compliance. There is nothing in any of their filings that would indicate that they want to pursue recreational marijuana sales. And quite honestly, their record keeping is better than some corporations that I do taxes for. So they run a pretty good ship. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public hearing part of tonight. I'm going to bring it back to the commission for deliberation, and Commissioner Stejic.
I'm inclined to support this application. I'd like to see, as Commissioner Niblin said, some more traditional business hours than 8 p.m. You've got condominium owners living above there that are probably going to be affected by the operation of any business after 5 p.m. I do think that either we have a problem with the library being there or we don't. I don't have a problem with the business being open from 3 to 5 p.m. I would like to see, awful lot of cities have had trouble with collecting taxes on cash sales or whatever. Every medical product other than marijuana in the United States that's not over the counter has a unique identifier of some sort on it. So whether it's law enforcement tracking it down or emergency response tracking down the item, there's got to be some way we can determine original point of sale of this product. And yeah, I'd like to see a unique identifier of some sort on there. But other than that, I'm inclined to approve this.
Commissioner Neblin.
Thank you. I have to say that my thinking on all this has evolved over a couple of years, I guess. I just left to my own devices some time ago. I don't think I would have been supportive of this business or any business, frankly, that proposed to dispense cannabis, but certainly having had a chance to hear kind of what the community thinks about it, and frankly, just recognizing the kind of the viewpoint, the broadly expressed viewpoint of the community, I think, like Commissioner Stedgink, I'm in support of this particular application. I think that, again, with respect to hours, I might be inclined to support something maybe just a little later. Somebody who works till 5 o'clock myself, and sometimes after. I think, candidly, 5 o'clock might be a little early as a closing time for folks who, folks who are coming from work. But I think maybe something like 6 would be a time that I might be supportive of, to at least give folk who are, maybe have to leave work a little early to get there, are still able to make use of the business. And I do like the idea of moving forward with something that is medically linked. I think that is something that's been, frankly, tried and tested over time in the state of California before now. I think we have some sense that medical marijuana dispensaries are not something that's new, and I think it's a good place for us to start as a community. I would really prefer there be some way that we could lock this particular business into a medical dispensary model. Frankly, a lot of what makes me comfortable about this is that it's a medical marijuana dispensary. It sounds like there really isn't a distinction drawn in our ordinance, and maybe we don't have the ability to do that. But if there were some way, I'd be even more comfortable in my position. But I'm comfortable moving forward at this point.
Just to follow up on that, along those lines, I would also be willing to explore. I'd be more comfortable if this were just a straight-up medical cannabis facility, because I think those facilities, they're harder to. There's more regulation, especially considering the proximity to the library. So I don't know if there's a way to do that. I was thinking we do have also. I'm curious if commissioners would support this, because we just did this with 7-Eleven, we did it with Taco Bell Cantina, but I wonder if there's a 1-year review period that we could put on this facility, since it is one of the first in the city. I think it would be a reasonable thing to do a relook at this facility in a year and see if it is living up.
2 comments. The no modification to the conditions as they are is limiting it to medical marijuana, because they were self-limiting in their operations plan. If you would like to maybe perhaps make that a little bit stronger, if that is your intent, so that it's instructive to future staff, you can certainly do that, so that it would not be changed administratively. I guess it would need another public hearing. And then regarding the annual review, certainly you've recently placed that condition on other projects. We can. I do want to remind the commission that the public safety license is reviewed and renewed annually. So there already is a mechanism in the program to have annual reviews through the police department. And because the license as well as the use permit, they're conditioned on each other being valid and active. So we've established some checks and balances in the program here.
And similarly, the marijuana regulations in the zoning provide the planning director authority to conduct an annual review of these permittees and to bring the permit back to the planning commission if there's evidence of problems. So the ordinance itself already has a baked-in annual review at the staff level.
Thank you. All right, well, that's interesting to hear. Actually, gets me.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to echo my support for your comments. I recognize that the law enforcement related annual review is a little bit different from, and I think it addresses things that might be different from the land use community impact oriented concerns that we might have. And I would be supportive of the proposition that, at least given that we're heading down a new road here, that maybe the first annual review might come back to us, so that we have the opportunity to hear about how things are going.
Thank you. I'm in agreement on that. And I'm in agreement also on the hours of operation. And if we could bring it down to, what was it, 9 to 6, that would be a good thing.
You know, I'm actually comfortable with the proposed hours that the applicant suggested, but my question is for staff, can we have some kind of restricted hours if they do go recreational, where we put a condition of approval on their, so if they decide to go recreational, you know, they can operate medically 10 to 8 if that's what we agree to, but if they want to go recreational, they can go like 12 to 4 or something like that.
So, if I understand you correctly, so if they add recreation
Then there would be much more restrictive hours
for the entire business,
for the entire business. But if they stick to medical, their hours as they propose, you know, that can be the condition of approval.
That's not necessarily precluded, but the issue is, I think, can you really tie that to the land use issues that are in the, identified in the ordinance? And so what is it about recreational use or recreational sales that would create land use impacts that is within the Planning Commission's purview? So if you were to seek to do that, you know, I think that you'd have to look through what these findings are and find, you know, substantial evidence of reasons why closing at 4 would be necessary.
Right.
So the alternative to that, as Tina and Christian spoke about, would be linking the approval to the business plan that they have in effect. And then if they wanted to come back to, then modify the business plan they have in effect, which would be, say, for non-medical uses, then it would have to come back to the Planning Commission for a use permit amendment. So that might be an easier way to accomplish the goal you have in mind of protecting the, or ensuring that the use is as proposed, rather than in advance saying, well, if they want to go recreational, let's tie it to 4 o'clock closing time, because like, again, I really think that, you know, to make the best decision here, you really need to have a tie to the land use impacts that you could identify from non-medical sales.
I mean, is that possible to have that research done? Is there a
Well, it's not a matter of
land
research.
use?
It's not a matter of research. It's a matter of, I think, the Planning Commission articulating grounds for the reasons why selling non-medical marijuana would have detrimental impacts to the community, for example.
Right. Well, I mean, I have no reason to not believe the applicant in his desire to sell medical marijuana and the support of the community for medical marijuana. But there doesn't seem anything to preclude them from pivoting to recreational. So, you know, any conditions we put on for medical, we have to think about that for recreational use. So either there's something that can snap into place if they go recreational, or we decide to put much more restrictive hours on the medical, so we're safe, or...
So I think if I understood the previous conversation we were having, is that currently the application is self-restricted, and that there could be a sentence added to condition number 6 to indicate that it is medical, approved for medical only, and that any change to add recreational will come back to the Planning Commission.
Okay, yep.
Right. I think that'd be good. And I think, just as an aside, it is 250 feet from a library. So I think you could make a finding that there's an endangerment there, from my perspective.
Right.
That's in the record.
I guess the only other condition, you know, I personally wouldn't want to see a security guard outside, you know, as you typically see in San Francisco, sitting on a stool, you know, waiting for customers. I don't know if we can put a condition of approval on prohibiting that.
Let's see what the other commissioners say. I'm going to start going by the lights. Commissioner Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. So just for some perspective, there could have been a lot of different sort of applicants to come forward as the first application. I kind of feel like this was sort of the ideal applicant. I mean, self-restriction to medical marijuana. We've heard a testimony from the community about the importance that this that the service is providing to their health. It's kind of, for me, it's a real easy one, actually. I came in with a lot of skepticism, but this seems like a really great fit. I'm in favor of the application. I went online and looked at the labeling restrictions that are in force, and I found the language in the statute. It says packages and labels shall not be made to be attractive to children. That's pretty straightforward and simple. I do think Chair Campbell pointed out something appropriate, that labeling edibles as gummies is probably in violation of that. So, we can put an extra qualifier in the conditions that say, no gummies, nothing shall be sold that would be appealing to children, but that would just be replicating what's already in the books. So I don't really care how we want to do that, but it's already covered in the regs. In terms of hours, as a working person, I hate it when I get home from work and I can't get to the store because it's closed. Just basic. So 6 o'clock, that's even kind of early for me. What about people who work till 5 or 5:30? I don't know. I don't have a problem with the hours, honestly, as requested, but I think Tina's suggestion that we can, I guess, make language a little more explicit in the conditions, that it's just restricted to medical uses, and so that if they want to go back for recreational, they have to come back to the commission. I'm fine with that. I think that's a great idea. What else? I think that's covered. Anyway, I'm really in favor of it. I think it's a great first potential for approval. I was sensitive. There was a comment from the public from somebody who was also applying about transparency with the process. At some point down the road, we don't have to address that now, but at some point that probably should be addressed. Anyway, let's see, other issues that you guys raised? No. Anyway, so I'm in favor, given the conditions that I mentioned. Thanks.
Chair, if I could just offer a point for consideration for the commission. It might be helpful to have the applicant clarify if it intends to continue its delivery component of its business, but that may provide access to the products and service and medicine and relief for those with unusual schedules that may not be able to make it to the physical brick and mortar retail store during whatever hours the commission might end up approving. It's my understanding they intended to continue with that, so that could provide off-hours type of support.
So actually we need to bring the applicant back up to respond to any public comments. I forgot to do that. Yes. So, applicant, not only can you answer that question, please, or see if you are amenable to it, but if there's anything else you wanted to say with regard to some of the comments that you heard.
Sure, yeah. The gentleman who spoke about us somehow missing a 10-day turnaround, it's our understanding that ordinance or resolution, or however that's styled legislatively, was put into place much later than when we submitted our application and were under the process. And so I just want the commission to be clear that there in fact were no deadlines that we missed or blew in any way. And I'm speaking this directly because I helped put the application together myself, and it's very, very difficult to find an architect to work with a small project, a transportation engineering firm to work with a small project. So it actually takes time to chase down those professionals and convince them, for something less than $50 bazillion to help us out with architectural renderings or the Institute of Transportation Safety Engineers analysis. So I just wish to clarify that we in fact have not missed any deadlines or were inside of any deadlines. We were in constant communication with city staff.
As far as the delivery, we will be continuing delivery service. What was the other question you had as far as that?
Do you have
Well, in terms of the delivery service, what are the hours of operation for that part of the business?
Same hours as we deliver until 8 o'clock, but delivery cutoff is at 7 o'clock for same-day deliveries. Anything after 7 would have to be scheduled for next day, so our guys don't work late into the evening. We would never want them to work any later than 8 o'clock.
Okay, so us setting different hours for the operation of the business would affect the delivery side also?
I suppose if you set the bricks and mortar hours as one, and I guess we were allowed to deliver through 8 PM or 7:30, as Jesus indicates, I don't see we would have a problem with that.
Okay, thank you. I
Yeah.
needed that clarification.
So I'm going to run through some lights here. I'm not sure if you have questions for the applicant or not, but I'm just going to run through and then we could read.
I don't know if these are questions, if they want to comment on them, or, you know, I'm very sympathetic to the notion of security and security guards. I tend to think that a security guard, given the scope and scale of what we're talking about, unless the chief of police felt like it was something especially necessary, I think that could be cost prohibitive for a business that's just starting out. Having said it, I don't feel like I would need to see that in order to vote in favor of this particular matter. I do feel pretty strongly about the operation of the brick and mortar location, the hours of operation anyway. Maybe 6 isn't the right number. Maybe something slightly later than that is the right number. I think that the delivery solution might be a way we can move forward on it, but I would be disinclined to support something, frankly, if it operated as late as 8 o'clock. Anyway, that's comments I wanted to make.
Thank you. Commissioner Clifford, more questions?
I want to make my comment, and my comment is that I'm very comfortable with both the applicant and the application. I know it's the first time out the gate, so we're being very, very careful. I like the business hours, actually. I think that they're actually appropriate, and I wouldn't change them unless the police department actually was getting complaints, and that would be then them enforcing anything. And also, in terms of coming back to us for review, I would certainly vote for that, but I'm seeing that there's going to be a police review at the end of a year. There's going to be a planning director review at the end of the year. I don't see the necessity for us to also review it. If they're not happy, they'll bring it to us and let us know that they're not happy, or deal with it directly. To schedule a whole nother meeting for everybody to oversee things that are being overseen already seems a little extraneous. So, at any rate, that's where I'm at. I will vote for it as it is.
All right, Commissioner Stanek.
I want to preserve Commissioner Rubenstein's and Commissioner Niblin's follow-up on the additional load that recreational marijuana will have over medical marijuana. Specifically, medical marijuana is a specific subset of the population that's under the care of a medical doctor with a existing malady that is treatable by marijuana, whereas recreational marijuana is every adult. So there's clearly a different load there, and I just want to preserve that for future discussions, perhaps even an annual review. The law enforcement review is something completely different. There's no obvious threshold that would kick it to us. I'm in favor of 6 p.m. hours. I have no problem with that. There's been all kinds of studies in the news in the last 9 days that show there's hugely varying potencies in there, and the listed potencies were not accurate on there. I'd like to see a unique identifier where, say, we had a medicine that did fail or whatever, the potency measurements that was whatever, instead of 5 grams, it was 5 milligrams, whatever, it was 100 milligrams, that would get revoked. Essentially, we'll pull back these 100 medicines that are grossly overpotent or something like that. Every medical item that is not over the counter sold in the U.S. has a unique identifier. I'd like to see these have some sort of, whether it's a serial number or a unique identifier like McDonald's has when you come in by McDonald's, some sort of unique identifier that we could scratch that McDonald's, but some sort of unique identifier where we could track it back to the purchaser. If, I've got a friend who's a Superior Court judge, and he found a medical marijuana card in his 12-year-old kid's wallet. So some sort of method to track down who sold the product, if it does end up in the hands of children, who sold the product if anyone does get poisoned by this medicine. People get poisoned by medicines all the time. But I think it's important that we do that, and I think it's important that we do this right, and I'd like to see this again in a year. Thank you.
Commissioner Rubenstein?
I just will reiterate, I do support the hours that the applicant is self-imposed, but in order to please my colleagues, I'd be agreeable to a reduced hour, maybe to 10 to 7 or 10 to 6 if necessary. I do think it's important that the applicant comes back simply because the pivot to recreational is hard for us to monitor. So, I don't even know what the trigger would be for us to even know if they become recreational, other than them coming back here and talking about it with us, maybe in 6 months, as opposed to a year, so.
I think we could add something to the conditions that would bootstrap the medical use, so that if they wanted to do recreational, they would need to come back to us. That's up to us to impose that, though.
Yeah, but how would, marijuana sales are legal, and they have an application, a legal permit. Couldn't they just accept payment for marijuana from anybody if they chose to?
I think staff, could you reiterate one more time the self-limiting aspect of this as far as recreational goes?
So, sure, I will do that. I also will directly respond to the question, which is this is a highly regulated area, and so the state knows if it's only medical and knows that they won't have their state license for recreational without local approval. And the way this use permit conditions of approval has been structured, it's limiting to what the applicant proposed, which is medical only. And it sounds like the commission may feel more comfortable with adding additional language to condition number 6, which would say that the operation plan, if they were to try to request to change that to include recreational, would require a public hearing with planning commission to amend this use permit.
And if I could chime in for a second, too. So, if any business were to operate beyond their conditions of approval by selling certain products, being open certain hours, whatever the activities were, they, run the risk of the city staff on their own finding out about the violations, of members of the community coming in and complaining about the violations, and then what that does is it gives the city the opportunity to inform the use permit holder that there's information that they're not complying with the terms of their use permit, and that they then risk having it revoked. So it's sort of a natural, it's not any different than any other business that operates in the city of Pacifica pursuant to its conditions of approval. And the first step is typically, once there's some evidence that there may be a problem there, that the city will investigate it and speak with the permittee and find out what the facts are, the potential facts, and if there's non-compliance, then the permittee risks losing their business through, for example, a revocation proceeding for the use permit. So it would be pretty standard to, I would think, in this situation, just like with any business. And then if you were to adopt the recommendation of staff here, which is that you could modify condition of approval 6 to be explicit, that the operating plan here includes that it's only medical operations, and if there were a desire to do recreational sales, they would need to seek a use permit amendment that should, pretty well address the problem. I mean, no system is perfect for making sure there's never mistakes or misunderstandings or efforts to take advantage of it, but you put the best systems in place, and then you rely on people to follow those systems, whether they're the parties that are enforcing it or the parties that need to comply, in order to try to make sure that those terms are ultimately followed.
Okay. Well, that said, then I would be in favor of having the applicant come back in a year. And just to follow up on Mr. Stegnick's comment about unique identifier codes, can I address the applicant?
Sure.
Is there a system in place for, or like a that where you could do that possibly? Does that exist in the marijuana industry?
Yes, so there's a track and trace system from the grower all the way to the dispensary. Everything is tracked now. Once we have our temporary license from here, we can apply for our state license. Once we have our temporary state license, I go to Sacramento to take a day class where they teach me how to use the California system. We have to use our own system as well as the California established system where they have access to at all times. As well as of July 1st, any products, edibles, concentrates, flour, it all has to be batch tested. So every time you get a delivery, you also get test results with that delivery for every single batch. So each one has an individual testing results for the company, as well as tracking system from the distributor all the way down to the manufacturer, all the way to dispensary, as well as from us, we'll know who we sell it to as well.
Right. I think what we're talking more about is like when you get a prescription from Walgreens, there's
UPC
a code on your bottle, right? That's
So
your
you're
prescription.
talking about unique identifying inventory with a scan?
Yeah, like if I walk out of
we could do
this
that.
this store and I buy something, there's a little code that's printed on a machine or a zip, barcode or something, and
Yeah, we can do that. And then some companies are starting to transition into having that UPC code on their products.
so is that something you could transition into over, let's say, this year period that we're talking about? So if you come back in a year, you'll have that system
Yes,
in
sir.
place?
So right now, what I'm seeing, I think majority support for is 9 to 6 business hours. 1 year, and you can all sort of jump in and correct me when I'm wrong. 9 to 6 business hours, and I'm going to call people, so don't just jump in. 1 year review, condition 6 modified to make sure it's staying medical. Seeing some support for a UBC, unique identifier code. I'm certainly in favor of that. I had thrown out limiting signage to the 3 signs that are allowed.
Yes, sure.
I would add that if we're going to limit it to 6, maybe we allow the applicant to still do his deliveries until 8.
Agreed, yeah.
Yes.
Seeing majority support for that. Okay. Let's see, I'm going to go and see if I forgot anything. Commissioner Clifford.
Well, I do think 6 is a little restrictive, but if they can still deliver till 8, I would go along with that. And I would also go along with the modification of condition 6 to include the comments that our planning director had put forth.
And Commissioner Rubenstein, I still had your light on, but might have been stale.
No.
Okay.
Just an elbow.
All right, well, so,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
I want to speak up about something that's a little uncomfortable for us, which is, I understand the track and trace system and the desire to have that, but we don't have that is not our area of expertise, or we do not have the ability to make sure that that type of condition is conducted appropriately or enforced. So my suggestion to help the commission accomplish its goal here is to ask if the applicant is amending their operations plan to include, they're basically offering to do this track and trace system. Because we, I believe, would have a very difficult time as staff making sure that that condition was implemented, because it's just not something we do.
Right. Well, I mean, that goes, thank you, because I was going to ask the applicant the same thing. And it actually goes to something that I felt the operations plan was wholly inadequate. So I couldn't vote for anything that included this operations plan. So I'd hope you're going to amend it anyway. But would you be willing to amend it?
Absolutely, Commissioner. We'd be happy to amend it. No gummies, track and trace system, and any recommendation you have to make it somewhat adequate, at least, we will take under advisement and enact immediately.
Do you need a certain period of time to get that system up and running? I mean, I assume it's kind of complicated.
You need a state license in order to be able to be on that system. So
Yeah,
once
you
we have it would just be the time it takes from getting our city, temporary city license to be able to apply for the state license. Once we have the temporary state license, then they'll give me an appointment to go out to Sacramento and be able to take the class and implement that system into our dispensary.
And just to correct the terminology, I'm sorry, that I'm using, I said track and trace, which is something the state's already going to implement. I meant the unique identifier system.
Right.
There's commercially available products just in retail where there are labels that are pre-printed and you can do direct, yes, we could do that very quickly in terms of an operational change, and we will be happy to put that in our operational plan.
It's great. I mean, I think all of our questions, and maybe the public is right, we're being educated here and now and continue to be, but it sounds like you want to operate, best practices and sort of the best operation, which is great, and I think all of these things contribute to that for your own business and for us in the community. So.
And especially from the foundation's perspective, our goal, throughout this entire process is to be the right community partner for Pacifica.
Great, thank you.
So I've got a bunch of lights. I think I'm just going to say one thing, and I'm going to leave it up to you guys to continue on. This is the first one out the box for the city, and so this actually wasn't the application I was hoping for, quite frankly. I think we put people through the paces for more through the paces for removing a heritage tree than we're doing here, but. I wasn't happy with the operations plan. I didn't think there was enough due diligence on that. I'm not happy. Quite frankly, there's just the lineage of the company. They didn't follow the rules for 2 years, didn't pay city taxes, and I'm uncomfortable with it. So it's not the applicant I wanted to see. And I think it's too close to the library. I think it's basically across the street from the library, and that's just something I brought up when we were doing the ordinance. So I won't be voting in favor of this, just to put that out there. But I do think it's a close call, and I do appreciate that it's medical marijuana as opposed to recreational across from the library. So it's somewhat of a close call for me, but I can't quite get there. Okay, Commissioner Neblin.
So just a couple concerns about the operations plan, this is actually a question, I guess, for the city attorney. I mean, I'm curious about whether or not we can condition our approval on the applicant submitting a revised operation plan that addresses the issue of, to the reasonable satisfaction of the planning director and, say, the chief of police, of a implementation of a unique identifier system. And also, I guess, this issue of not selling gummies or any other, sort of particular, specific, granular concerns we might have with respect to the operations plan. Again, sort of this notion that we'd approve it, subject to the planning department, the planning director, and the chief of police receiving a revised operations plan within a certain period of time that's reasonably satisfactory as to those points.
I don't see any reason why you couldn't do that. I would assume that the planning director feels the same way, that, so you could make a condition of approval that there should be an amended operations plan to address these issues to the reasonable satisfaction of the planning director.
Well, that would be my proposal, at least as to the issue of the unique identifier, sort of the listing out of product, to the extent that there are issues with the listing out of product, and I don't know, there may be other the hours of operation, of course, we've talked about, and there may be other things that my colleagues think are appropriate, but I'm comfortable giving that discretion to city staff, given the specific things we've pointed out and maybe the other things that constitute appropriate practice that would be within your, reasonable discretion.
I have a clarifying question for the commission. I would just request that the no gummies, that you all are clear, is it that you're not wanting something that's in the shape of a gummy bear that would be attractive to a child, or if it's like rectangular or square And
It
it
may
just
have,
happens to be Chewy, are you okay with that?
yeah, well, through the chair, it may be that that wasn't even an appropriate example. I mean, whatever, state law apparently speaks somewhat specifically to this, so I'm not a huge fan of necessarily having to articulate what state law already says, but it was down in my notes, so strike it if that's not an appropriate thing for us to be concerned about. But anyway, I would like the operations plan to be revised to the reasonable satisfaction of staff, and I'd like that to be a condition of approval.
Okay, Commissioner Gordon.
Okay, I think we're getting close. In terms of the hours of operation, I think I was counting votes, and I think there's at least of the commissioners who looks like are going to be voting in favor of the project. I think there's I think there's three commissioners who are okay with 8, and there's 2 who want 6. What if we went with 7 p.m. for a brick and mortar?
I'm okay with 6 if that's the consensus, but I'm okay with 8 as well.
I'd prefer 6. If they come back with the owners of those condominiums next year at their one-year review and they have glowing citizenship reviews, I'd be willing to take another look at their hours. And just to be clear on that, the gummies issue was, don't come back with an amended staff report that includes stuff that's already prohibited by the state. Thank you.
And I'm comfortable with going to 7. 8 would be my preference, but if the commission as a whole wants 6, I'll vote. I'm still going to vote for this project. So
Trying to get a sense of
I would be more comfortable with a later hour, just because I know that a lot of people who need this stuff aren't going to necessarily be able to get there by 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm just very concerned about sort of the ordinary kind of flow of life in a residential structure. And I recognize when you have a residence that's located in a mixed-use area, you know, there are certain trade-offs that are made. I'd honestly prefer that we start with a smaller step at 6 and see how that goes. I think I'm seeing things consistent with Commissioner Stedjink's perspective. I'd prefer to stay at 6.
Okay.
I'd support 6 with the 8 p.m. delivery limitation.
All right. I'm okay with that. Are there other?
We have 2 more lights, just want to make sure we get through them all. Commissioner Stedjink?
I think it's already been addressed, but the unique identifiers, I'm in favor of.
Okay, Commissioner Rubenstein? Okay, just want to get rid of the lights. Okay, does anyone want to make a motion?
You want to give it a shot? Amanda?
Find it.
I don't remember all of
I can go through them again.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah?
Just the specific,
Well, actually, you know, you probably I'm going to hand it to the vice chair on this one and see if you can remember it, because I think,
Why don't we do it together?
okay, here we go. Okay, no more than the 3 signs provided in the application. 9 to 6 brick and mortar hours with delivery to 8?
10 to 6.
10 to 6, there we go. 10 to 6 brick and mortar hours, deliveries from that facility up till 8 o'clock. I'm not sure what that means exactly, delivery till 8, or the last delivery truck leaves at 8, or what, but...
I believe the applicant was indicating that they need to get the order in by 7, that they don't make any deliveries after 8 o'clock.
Okay.
If I was understanding correctly.
Correct.
All right. 1-year review, in addition to what's already required by the city. Modifying condition 6 to ensure that this facility is staying medical-based. Requiring the unique identifier, UBC code or something akin, something like that, and putting it, amending the operations plan to reflect that change. And there's one,
Well, it was amending the operations plan to the satisfaction of the director so that, for example...
To address, among other things, the unique identifier and hours of operation. I think that some of these things are going to get incorporated by reference into the operations plan, but I think that was the...
And there's also the prohibition of having a security guard permanently stationed outside.
What was that?
prohibiting a security guard?
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't be in favor of that, but, I mean, if they want to put a security guard out there in case they get robbed or something.
I mean, just in my mind, I see in San Francisco, they have like usually a guy permanently in front of the store on a stool, sitting there.
So, but...
You're saying you don't
Through the
want
chair, if you're the chair, I thought the
I don't wanna
request
see that
was,
in Pacifica.
you do not or don't want to...
No, I do not.
You want to see them inside.
I want to see, the security guard could be inside, of course, but not out on the sidewalk.
Well, just speaking for me, I'm not voting for this anyway, but I think that the businesses probably put them outside for a reason. I mean, there might be because there is more deterrence or,
No,
I mean, I want to leave it up to the business owner.
We
Any
can
small
ask-
business
We can ask
owner.
him, he's here. What's your opinion on that?
I agree with you. We prefer to have the security guard inside. We believe if there's someone outside, it's a bit of an intimidating approach for the patient. It makes some patients feel uncomfortable, and we don't want the patient to feel uncomfortable. We want them to feel welcome.
So maybe it's more appropriate for a recreational use than a
Correct.
medical use.
Oh, that's fine, if they're fine with it.
Well, wouldn't we want to just leave it up to the discretion of the owner, of the applicant?
You know, I'll defer to you guys on that. I'm not,
I do see that in San Francisco, that they've got, that frequently stores will have a employee permanently stationed outside on there, and it just makes it look like it doesn't blend in with the building it was before the business moved in, and it's, I don't know, it's unusual, and I like that idea, having any security inside, and if the applicant is amenable to it, I'd say let's do it.
Yeah, I was just trying to keep their discretion, but I think that's fine too. So, Commissioner,
I'm ready to make a motion, I think. If,
I had one light for Commissioner Gordon. In case you do want to say something?
No.
All right.
Fine. I thought we just were making a motion. Oh, no, we were just going through the issues.
Going through the issues.
Because I thought you were going to make a motion that you were going to vote against, which I was really excited about.
if Commissioner Gordon was actually, in fact, articulating a motion, then that's cool. I'm prepared to let that be the motion.
Doesn't matter.
Well, I think maybe it would make sense for us to go ahead and, if it's all right, I guess I'll go ahead and move that the Planning Commission find that the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, approves marijuana use permit MUP 418 by adopting the resolution included as attachment A to the staff report, including conditions of approval in Exhibit A to the resolution, subject to the various points that the chair and Commissioner Gordon had just gone through, specifically the limitation to 3 signs as described in the staff report, the hours of the brick and mortar operation being 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. with delivery up until 8 p.m., the submission of a revised business plan or operations plan or whatever the correct nomenclature is for that, a 1-year review as discussed in these proceedings, a modification of condition 6 to be clear that we're dealing with a medical dispensary model here as opposed to recreational, that the revised business plan include a reasonably satisfactory description of implementation of a unique identifier system, again, a system that's satisfactory reasonably to the planning director, and I think that's what I have. Was there anything I missed?
No posting security guard outside?
And that there shall be no security guard posted outside. I will add that to the motion. That is my motion.
All right, we've had a motion, and let's see, Commissioner Clifford.
I'll second that motion with all of the changes.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Please vote. All right, that passes with one, no. Congratulations, you have an approved project.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Anyone aggrieved by the action of the Planning Commission has 10 calendar days to appeal the decision in writing to the City Council. And on to the next. All right, onward to text amendment TA-112-18 initiated by the City of Pacifica to amend the existing zoning regulations in order to clarify existing provisions by processing marijuana use permit applications. The recommended action tonight is to adopt the attached resolution, initiating the amendments, and recommending approval of the City Council. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you this evening is a request to make a recommendation to City Council on what we think is a fairly minor ordinance amendment to close the loop on some language that was kind of circular within the ordinance. This is the marijuana ordinance. And what it said is that when we receive a marijuana application or use permit application, we will check it for completeness, and if it's incomplete, the applicant then has 10 days to make the application complete. And then it went on to say, or as it's currently written, if it is incomplete after the 10 days, it is deemed incomplete. So you just kind of stay in this loop. So we wanted to correct that by saying that it would be deemed incomplete and it would no longer be processed, that application would move to the bottom of the lottery ranking list, and that we would move on to the next application. And so, this is just as I said, a fairly simple ordinance amendment, hoping to close that loop as we're moving through and processing these applications.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Commissioner Clifford.
Now, is that 10 calendar days or 10 work days?
It is currently not specified, so it would be, I think, interpreted to be 10 calendar days.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Gordon.
I'm ready to make a motion unless there's more comments.
We have public comments.
Commissioner.
Oh, geez, right.
Yeah.
Withdrawn.
Ready to move, man.
All right.
Are 10 days sufficient for this type of?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions for staff?
I do actually have a
Okay,
question.
Commissioner Neblin.
Is there a particular reason why we couldn't just clarify that we're talking about calendar versus business days?
No, absolutely not. It would be helpful if the commission would like to clarify that.
Okay. I think it would make sense for us to state specifically what we're talking about. Get a little confusing because people, I think, if they were to reference the California Civil Code, I think that when it's, or maybe it's the rules, I can't remember myself, but there are some places where if it's 10 days or less, it's assumed business days, and if it's more than 10 days, it's assumed calendar. So I'd rather not get into a fight like that. So probably be good for us just to pick something and land on it.
I would assume 10 business days to be conservative.
Which is exactly the point, because it's different from what the planning director just said. So, but I think one way or the other, I'm in agreement generally, subject to public comment, of course, but we ought to just state it explicitly in the text.
Was the intent to make it 10 calendar days?
Actually, we don't have a strong preference, so if it's business days, just to give them a couple extra days on the weekend, that's fine with us.
Okay, Commissioner, well, you'd say you just asked the question. Well, so the city code has a default, right? Does it?
Do we have a default?
I don't know that the city code has a default. I think that it's often, my memory at least, is that it's 10 calendar days in most situations in the city code that I've seen.
Right. I'll bet we have it.
We just did this with an appeal, and, it was an appeal of an administrative citation, not a planning commission item, and I think it is calendar days, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm in favor of calendar days. Anyone else?
I'm in favor of calendar days.
Calendar days,
Calendar's fine with me.
Calendar,
in favor of
calendars,
business
all right.
days.
business days, right?
So just to be out there.
No, sorry, calendar days.
Oh, man. All right. I'll go with business days. Business days, anyone?
Good.
Everyone's good with that? All right. Business days. All right, great. I am going to open up the public hearing at this point then. Tim Fitzpatrick. Anyone willing to comment or wanting to comment on this, please fill out a yellow card in the back, bring it up to staff. You've got 3 minutes. Tim Fitzpatrick.
Hey everyone, this is Adam Zollinger. We are applicants in holding process of this whole thing. We've been in constant communication with the city from the beginning regarding this 10 days because it plays a big factor. We were informed by the city or the planning department that it actually took 56 days for Fog Zone to get the rest of their information in. The rules stated, the ordinances state that you need to submit a complete application. Now, it also says if you don't submit a complete application, you'll be given the 10 days. But it's very clear that within that 10 days, you have to submit a complete application, which is what the amendment's saying. On the very first page of the use permit website, it says down at the bottom that it's the people's responsibility to keep checking the website for updates and anything that changes. The people in front of us, we're actually next in line to be reviewed. The people in front of us, none of them adhered to that 10 days. And therefore, we think that these applications should have been denied based off of that. We're obviously very for the amendment changing. We do have a question on that. I mean, it does state in here that it is retroactive to the beginning of the process. So if you guys do approve this, I mean, that should be taking people out of line and putting them back. And, from the beginning, the city has been trying to do this fair, and I give them credit. They have done that to the best of their ability. We're just hoping that the process stays fair, and it's fair because it says in Ordinance 944084 that they have 10 days. So, I know the Fog City or Fog Center said that they didn't know anything about it, but it is in the ordinances already. All this amendment does is clarify what happens to that application once it's deemed incomplete, but it should have been deemed incomplete from the beginning. So we're hoping this passes and, the city adheres to, the laws that they set forth at the beginning. So.
Thank you. And now Adam Zollinger. Yeah, go ahead. You got 3 minutes.
Yeah, and us trying to adhere to that, it's also, like the prior applicant said, it was very hard to get that done in 10 days, to get architectural prints and all the other necessities with the application process. It was very difficult, and we spent a lot of money actually to make that happen, and finding out now that it could have possibly been unnecessary for us to have spent that because people were granted in excess of 10 days. It's a little disturbing to hear, and we would just hope that the city would actually continue to follow the rules that they set forth from the beginning, and yeah. And also one of the big things is that whereas on this amendment thing, where it says whereas the intent of the amendment is not to alter the existing law, the amendments therefore apply retroactively to any and all marijuana use permit applications submitted prior to the effective date of this resolution. I feel that would definitely coincide with their application being approved because of their excess of 10 days. And that would also give us our opportunity to show you guys our, what we think is a very good opportunity for the city to have a medical and recreational dispensary in the city and have our application reviewed, which it has not yet been because we are in the holding process. So that's about it. And it's all the literature that was provided on the exhibit and in the ordinance and in the resolution. So hopefully that could get taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you. And you could, okay, go ahead. You have time.
Also, yeah, I drafted a letter after speaking with the planning department to give you guys a while back. I know there was a leave of absence from some people there, and it was hard to track down some of the paperwork, but we wrote a letter just explaining ourselves and a little bit about us and the process that we dealt with. Beginning to become a little flawed there with it done the correct way with the intended process.
Well, if you want to hand anything to staff, they can give it to us to take a look at.
I believe that's the letter that Mr. Zollinger provided to me earlier. I've placed in front of the commission.
Oh, we have it.
And there are copies in the back of the council chambers as well.
Oh, we have it.
We have.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, appreciate it. I don't see any more cards up here for public comment, so I'm going to close that, bring it back to the commission, and just before somebody makes a motion, I just want to ask, what do you think of the public comment
Yeah.
there?
So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. So I think I'm not sure, but it's possible that the speakers are under the assumption that because they haven't received an incomplete letter, that they're complete, and so that there's these applications that are complete that are waiting. And actually, we haven't started to check their application for completeness yet, because we're not going to spend their money, basically using time, staff time and resources to do that until it's their turn to start processing. So if that is an assumption they're making, it's not a correct assumption. So we haven't checked their application for completeness yet. They haven't been given 10 days, and they're not really in that process yet. And the cleanup that is needed is exactly what we're proposing to the commission this evening. And we do think that there's an interesting point that they made, that there is a recital. It's the last whereas on packet page 53, where it does speak to the retroactive applicability of the ordinance amendment. And we wrote that in there because we do have one application that is still incomplete, and we keep trying to encourage them and give them access to staff to ask us questions, to help them along, and they're still incomplete. And so what we'd like to do is revise that. Can I borrow that? Revise that recital to add and not yet deemed complete by the effective date of this ordinance. The application you heard this evening was obviously deemed complete, and there'd be one coming back to you, I believe at the next regular meeting that's complete. If I said incomplete, I'm sorry. They're complete.
Yeah, I got that. Thank you. And to the public commenters, I can't bring you back up. I'm sorry. It's just the way the process works. And I know you'd like to speak, and hopefully you can have a conversation with staff later. Okay. Let's see. Commissioner Stendick.
Just to be clear, that clarification would make it read, all marijuana use, why don't you just tell me what that would read? That applies to the retroactive, correct? So essentially, all marijuana use permit applications not yet deemed complete submitted prior to the effective date of this resolution?
Yeah, so we're going
To read it in its entirety, the last recital on page 53 of the packet would say, whereas the intent of these amendments is not to alter existing law, and these amendments therefore apply retroactively to any and all marijuana use permit applications submitted prior to the effective date of this ordinance, changing the word resolution to ordinance, and not yet deemed complete by the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Since this agenda is, I'm going to just go over your workflow description right there. I'm not 100% sure this is accurate, but I've heard it repeated that this was the fifth applicant in line by that lottery. Is that correct?
You're referring to the Fog Center LLC?
That's correct.
They had lottery number 5, yes.
Walk me through how number 1 has not yet been deemed incomplete to get to number 2, which would then be deemed incomplete to get to number 3. Do you see what I'm saying? Why is 5 the first one?
Sure. So the lottery selection number is not immediately reflective of the order in which the applications may be processed. And the reason for that is the numerical limitations within the overlay districts. So when the lottery selection was made, it was for all applications, but the applications were among various marijuana overlay districts. And so if 1 and 2 were in one of the overlay districts, and 3 was in that same overlay district, we would be unable to process 3, but we could skip to number 4 if that was in a different overlay district. And so in this instance, number 1 was in the Sharp Park overlay district, and the rest in between 2, 3, and 4, they were in other overlay districts, which means the second application in the Sharp Park overlay district was number 5.
If the slate is completely bare, 0, no applications have been allowed, how would number 1 not be the first applicant approved?
Number 1's application was not complete ahead of number 5.
but we're not evaluating number 5 until number 1 has been deemed incomplete, correct?
No, that's not correct.
That's the point.
Can you restate that? Because I didn't understand that.
Once we've identified the order of the lottery selection that could theoretically be approved within the numerical limitations, we began processing those applications which were identified and provided them an opportunity to come back as quickly as they could with complete applications because all were deemed incomplete. Number 5 was the first to come back with complete information and was thus the first application to be scheduled for public hearing. Number 1 was the second application to come back with complete information and has thus been scheduled for October 1st public hearing.
And number 1 and number 5 are the only two between number 1 and number 5 that are in the Sharp Park Overlay District. So number 5 is not skipping anybody else above them in
Gotcha.
the Sharp
Thank
Park
you.
District.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are ready for a vote. Okay, Commissioner Clifford.
I'm going to move for approval, move that the Planning Commission find the proposed ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, adopt the resolution included as attachment A, staff report to initiate the text amendment recommended to approval to the City Council and incorporate all maps and testimony by reference, with the stipulation that it is 10 business days.
And the change to the recital?
From
The amendment to
resolution
the
ordinance.
recital?
Yes.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second, Commissioner Nebelin.
I'll second the motion.
All right, vote. That passes unanimously. Right, on to Commission Communications. Anyone? All right, Commissioner Clifford.
I'm going to announce that I'm no longer going to be able to handle the Library Advisory Committee slot, and I'm hoping that somebody else can take that over for me.
Commissioner Stejek, about the volunteer?
I believe you're wrong, sir.
Well, we would need to agendize that. So I think, thank you for making that announcement, and then we will bring that onto a future agenda for an appointment to the committee.
All right, Commissioner Stejek, you did have your light on, or was it a stale one?
That's
Find it
correct.
stale.
That's correct. They, like one or more other commissioners, I attended the Pacifica Daily City Democrats candidate forum for city council candidates this Saturday, and I was disappointed to learn from their comments that 4 out of 7 candidates were completely unaware that ADUs had already been expedited. I think that no one knows this. The information has gotten out quite poorly. It's kind of trickled out. I think we've had just the fact that we've got 4 candidates that were completely unaware that ADUs have already been expedited, and that we have the single most lenient ADU legislation of all 20 cities in the county is kind of, it's curious, if nothing else. I'd like to see some sort of, I know we're booked to death with study sessions, et cetera, but some sort of effort made to get that information out to people that could benefit from it. I'd also like to know if it's possible that every commissioner could get a copy of the bylaws. They, I just, for the record there's a couple things that we're doing that might be eye-opening on there. And I think that's it.
All right, I don't see any more commissioner communication. I did want to say thank you to our police chief for attending tonight, but I just realized when he stepped up to leave that I missed that opportunity. All right, staff communications.
So as I mentioned with the last item, the second marijuana use permit will be before you on October 1. And This Saturday, we had our last scheduled community meeting on the local coastal plan adaptation policies. It was a draft presentation to the public regarding our draft policies. And the public comment period will end on October 5th, according to the current schedule, and will be before you all on November 19th. Likely the only item on the agenda. And that was all my updates.
Okay, so that closes staff communications. Okay, we've come to the end. Commissioner Gordon.
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Clifford.
I second that.
All right, motion second, please vote. Thank you. Good night.